Hi, Keely. Welcome. I was just thinking of checking out. Like, oh, okay, nobody's here. How are you doing in the heat? You staying cool? Oh, good. I'm glad you got outside. Yeah, I was outside. We went for a walk earlier, and it's definitely quite hot. I feel like it was hotter and more humid yesterday. Um, so it's nice that it's cooled down just a little bit. But hopefully tomorrow and the next day it'll cool down even more. Summer. It's definitely summer. How do you like to stay cool in the summer? Do you have a AC unit in your house, or do you just hang out with the fan? Yeah. Whoa, I can't believe you finished it. That's so great. Oh, I'm so glad. Ugh, it's such a good show. I really should watch it. I've been distracted with, Animal Crossing and another game, and then playing a lot of D&D, and then wrapping up the semester, so I haven't really had a chance to sit down and commit to rewatching Avatar. But I look forward to it because it really is a masterpiece. Cool. It's funny in California growing up, AC is something that you need if you live on the inside, but if you live near the coast, it's kind of like a luxury and you don't need it so much. And it's seen as kind of wasteful. And I remember thinking like, oh, why would anybody ever need AC? But that's before I lived in the Midwest or visited Indiana in the South, and it's just wild. Like the humidity really just sucks you dry. And now I know better. I learned. So what did you think of the end of Avatar? Like I know I was pretty happy with the ending. It's been a while, but I know that there was kind of a serious twist with what happens with the Fire Lord. What did you think of that? And were you disappointed? Were you surprised? Were you? And I know last week you'd mentioned Zuko's character arc, and how did you feel about that now that you finished it? Do you feel like it holds up? Do you feel like the hype was real, or were you kind of disappointed by that? Like, oh no, character arc's not as good. Yeah, the twist. Yeah. Oh, wild. I didn't know that Mark Hamill voiced him. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, Mark Hamill is so iconic. It's funny. I think many actors struggle with that, where they've had such a prominent role that everybody recognizes them for, where Mark Hamill, it's like, okay, that's Luke Skywalker, and it's one and the same person. And it's been really cool to see him kind of come into his own in voice acting, where he voiced the Joker in the Batman animated series, and that's such an iconic thing for people my age and a little bit younger, a little bit older. And he really made a mark basically on the voice acting world through that, which is he had his own second career basically. So I'm not surprised that he has this really prominent role, but voice acting, the nature is, unless you're a big fan, you generally don't hear about who does the voice acting. You were so mad that Zuko betrayed Iroh in season two, but I was so happy when they were united in season three. The character arc, yeah, ugh. For me, again, I have to rewatch it because it's all kind of fuzzy. But it's so heartbreaking to see him make such a massive mistake. But what that does is it kind of prepares him for this big turnaround where he can redeem himself. And redemption is such a powerful theme, especially I've seen a lot of people kind of discover the show on my Twitter feed and stuff, talking about um, a young man challenging his father for being an abusive father, where Ozai was an abusive father to Zuko and blamed Zuko for his own failings and such, and how powerful it is to have a young man kind of say, "Hey, I've suffered at your hands," and to challenge him and kind of um, work through that in a compelling narrative arc. And I was so surprised when Aang just took away Ozai's firebending. Like, I think everybody was expecting, okay, well, he's going to kill Ozai, but that's not Aang. Aang is not. And I feel like that's the main storyline: is how will Aang become the Avatar? Because he is the Avatar. He has the power. He has the kind of most of the wisdom, but he doesn't have the experience, and so then he has to get the experience of kind of dealing with this big world-changing event, and it shapes him, and he makes difficult decisions, like with Ozai. Um, and yeah, mind bending. Ugh, so wild. And something I really loved was that battle was so impressive and so well choreographed. And, I've enjoyed watching anime for that reason, where it's like, oh, this is really good choreography. Um, but it doesn't end with, Aang just kills the guy. Okay, bad guy's dead. Boom, 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 done. Um, it gets to the heart of where Ozai identifies as a firebender, and Ozai is like, I am a firebender, and that's who I am, and I'm powerful. And for Aang to take away that power is almost more of a punishment than death. If Ozai were to be killed, it would be kind of like, okay, he could serve as a martyr, he could serve as kind of an example to people who want to follow in his path. But instead, he just becomes this kind of failed figure, and it's it's so great. I just love it. Watched an hour-long video on Azula's psychology today too. Oh yeah, gosh. Azula, like I really don't remember that character so much, but I've seen a lot of people really kind of pull on that. I'll have to rewatch it. But the idea of lightning bending and rage and kind of being the good daughter, um, yeah, she didn't make a big impression on me, besides being really evil. Um, but I also watched it a while ago, and so now to rewatch it now with the perspective I have now and maybe a little bit more compassion would be really really interesting. And that's wild that you watched an hour long video. It must have been really good. So what were the points that were made in the video that kept you watching for that hour? You know, because like I said, my memory of Azula is just okay. She's everything Zuko's not in the eyes of Ozai, and she's a successful sibling, and she's got more power with her lightning bending, essentially. Uh, but again, I'm sure there's more to it, and clearly there is because people have really picked up on it. So, I'd be curious to hear what you found interesting, what made you think, what made you really wanna, okay, I want to watch the rest of this hour-long video. Oh, co-parenting. Okay. So there's the most interesting is when the person talked about co-parenting. Okay. Okay. Gosh, yeah, there's so much I don't remember. As Azula as a co-parent, as if like Ozai and Azula are kind of co-parenting um, Zuko. Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, gosh, there's. Thank you for reminding me how much I have missed in not rewatching it. Because I don't even remember Ursa. So Ozai was pleased with power and cunning. Yeah, he's got this very like it's a little reductionist to say this, but if you look at the yin yang, the dynamics of yang are kind of fire. So they're elemental. It's warm, it's dry, it's hot, um, and you want a little bit of it because otherwise you're just kind of lazy and lolling about. But too much yang and you get too much anger, too much fire, and there's just this kind of rage that you just cannot quench, or even just activity, right? And then yang is less activity and more passive, more soft, cool water. And I really loved in the series how they worked with those dynamics a little bit. You know, it's not like a super. I think there were people who worked on the show who had pretty sophisticated understandings of Taoism and those binaries and the non duality of those binaries, right? And so it's so interesting that they this person picked up on the fact that Ozai represented this father figure that's obsessed with power and cunning, and Ursa, who's I guess is the mother. Again, it's been a long time, but teaching compassion and love, um, and them being opposites, and that's yeah, that's super interesting. And so one sibling found positive reinforcement with each parent. Yeah, so Zuko, as an older Zuko, and Zuko, book three Zuko would be close to his mother, with compassion and love. But young Zuko was desperately trying to curry Ozai's approval, right? Um, the hunger for a father's approval is such a powerful force. Um, and yeah, positive reinforcement doesn't mean good, right? It just means encouragement. And so for parents, the idea of, okay, well, what behavior do you want to encourage? What do you model? And then also what kind of behavior do you want to encourage? Do you want to foster a sense of um, power, right? Because Ozai wanted power and probably thought power was the most important thing, and probably genuinely believed that for his kid's sake. Um, he's not purely evil, right? He probably had some reason to believe, okay, I need my kids to be powerful so they can survive or to thrive. Whereas Ursa has the idea of, well, no, there needs to be softness. They made a point about Ursa being disappointed with Azula for being uncaring or not compassionate, while Ozai punished Zuko for speaking up against sending inexperienced soldiers. Yeah, okay, so there's this kind of mismatching, right? So Ursa's disappointment with Azula not being caring enough or compassionate enough might have been just as pivotal in her becoming who she became, where she's filled with rage and she's able to channel lightning. Um, so her mother's disappointment might have been so powerful that she became this kind of villain, and Zuko, was punished by his father, was punished by Ozai, and that almost drove him to become a villain, right? But fortunately, he has that redemption arc. But this idea of parents' approval or support as really pivotal in shaping who these characters become and how they see themselves, especially, right? Because Asula, if I remember correctly, again, it's been a while, but maybe she overlearned that lesson, right? She saw her mother being disappointed in Asula's lack of compassion, and Asula said, "Fine, I guess I'll just be this monster that has no compassion." And she went all the way to the extreme of zero compassion for the weak or something like that. So she almost overlearned that lesson despite her mother's best intention. It's so good. I'm really glad that you watched it. It's such a fun series. It's so silly and fun and playful, but it really deals with pretty serious stuff. And so you can engage with it on all different levels. And, not to not to be too forced with it, but the Petit Prince, the Little Prince, operates in that same way where there are levels where a young kid, 10 or 11 or 12, can understand some of the really pretty powerful wisdom it holds. But then as you get older, there are different lessons you can learn from it. Um, and if you're able to operate on different levels in terms of maturity and analysis, you can really draw quite a great deal from it. But on the surface, it looks like a very simple text. The found parent after Ursa was banished. Iroh became Zuko's found parent, and that really saved him from becoming someone like. Yeah, yeah, Uncle Iroh. Yeah, yeah. So not only was Zuko getting this powerful um, kind of encouragement to be rageful and violent and angry young, he also wasn't getting that balance from his mother, right? He wasn't getting that balance. Um, and Ozai sent Iroh away, maybe with the intent of, I don't know. I don't think he anticipated Iroh and Zuko becoming so close, or Iroh really spending the kind of time having the patience required to raise Zuko. Somebody posted a meme, and it was the clips from Guardians of the Galaxy Part 2. Um, and there's a scene where one character is saving Star Lord, and he says, "Okay, well, so and so might have been your father, but he wasn't your daddy." And so in the meme, they said, Uncle Iroh is talking to Zuko, and he says, "Okay, Ozai may have been your father, but he wasn't your daddy. He didn't raise you." Um, and I think that's a good use of that that trope. And it's true, where, Zuko probably felt more emotionally and spiritually and just genuinely love connected with Iroh than he may have felt with his blood father, which is an important lesson. Found family. It's good stuff. It's such good stuff. I'm feeling lots of excitement and admiration for that. Yeah, yeah, I'm glad you saw it. I was worried about spoiling stuff. But that's such a great scene in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 where, you know, yeah, yeah, and it does work. Right? It is kind of perfect. Um, One of my favorite plays is King Lear for that reason, where it's this connection between father and daughter, or father and son, and those connections are so powerful. And I think I'm just so grateful that there is a narrative like Avatar or like even Guardians of the Galaxy, why not, where there's this kind of dialectic of like, okay, you can have a really terrible father. You can have just abusive, neglectful, selfish father, because it is gendered, and yet you can still find another father figure. You can find an uncle or a daddy, for Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where it's like, okay, you're not condemned from your parents' failures. You can fill in those voids. You can learn those lessons. You can seek out and find people who will nurture the things in you that you need to survive, instead of the the abuse and the negligence and stuff like we saw with Guardians or Avatar. Really good stuff. I'm so glad, Kaylee. I'm really glad that you're watching this stuff. And again, I do think it is gendered, where there is the trope of the father who's um, inflexible, rigid, demanding, abusive, and at the same time neglectful, which is kind of like, doesn't quite add up. Um, but that doesn't mean it has to be the son who suffers in that way. Oftentimes it's the son who's portrayed as, okay, well, you're the one to then fill in the to replace this father. But it can work for daughters and for non-binary folk too, where it's like there's still these patterns that influence us, and we make choices. We make choices to reproduce those patterns, right? Or to challenge them and to unlearn them and do better. Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad, Kaylee. I'm so glad that a lot of your friends really love the series too. It's and maybe it's thanks to the pandemic that we have all this time, right, to sit at home, for those of us who don't have to, work 40, 50 hours a week. You know, those of us who do have that time to sit and enjoy a show and watch it through, um, to then have that community of people who talk about it, and it's not the same discussing it online, or over the phone, but like that's a really powerful thing. And when I was at school, when I was at UW doing my doctorate, like I really, um, once I finished coursework and I went into dissertation writing, I really missed coursework because you learn so much through discussing, there's a lot you can learn just on your own. You can learn a lot just reading and reading and reading and listening and absorbing, but there needs to be some kind of output. There needs to be writing, or there needs to be spoken presentation, and most importantly, there needs to be dialogue. And that can be between the teacher and student, or it can be between students. But there needs to be that dialogue, because you get these perspectives, you get these things that oh gosh, that was out of the side of my vision and I missed it, or oh, I didn't even think about it that way, or oh, I forgot about that. um, and that, I feel like that just multiplies, it deepens your understanding and appreciation for stuff so much. um, and so I'm so 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 glad to hear that you've got people to discuss it with, and you're inspiring me to really watch it, to watch it again, uh, because it is good, and it does have these really powerful, powerful lessons, um, without getting heavy with it. It's just, they're just there, and they're presented as okay. It's part of the story. Um, so I'm so 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 glad that you're able to discuss it with friends. That's so important. So important. We all learn so much from the people we discuss with. We all learn so much from our friends, and they learn a lot from us. So I'm really glad for your friend's sake and for your sake that you had that. But it is 4 p.m. I'd love to continue discussing, even though I think I would be better off watching it before unpacking it even more. I have so much to say about it. I think it's so great, and I love hearing from you about it, your perspective, and the things that you saw that I didn't see at first, or maybe have forgotten. Um, so yeah, maybe we'll have more to share next week. I'm sorry I was running late today. Yeah, it's great talking to you too. I'm sorry we're not talking directly, but I really appreciate you showing up. I am sorry I have to run, and um, again, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I'm here. I'm just prepping to run a D&D module, so it's just personal stuff, and I can do that while on YouTube Live. So it feels kind of goofy sitting in front of a camera, but I'm happy to do it um, if somebody shows up. And if nobody shows up, that's okay, because I'm making the most of it. Um, but I'm very, very happy that you came through, Kaylee, and I'm very, very happy to hear that you finished the series and that you loved it so much and that you got so much from it. And yeah, I hope you stay cool, which is easier said than done. Uh, we don't have AC in our house yet, so we need to get that going. And take good care. Au revoir.